Welcome back. Well, today there are various agri-tech startups that have made farming more profitable by eliminating risk exposure and delivering ROI to investors who do not have to buy land, place workers on salaries, or even burn cash on pest control and management. Well, we have Stephanie Mills now, growth manager at AFEX, to explain all of this to us. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Ladi. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, so looking at, agri-tech now, we know I've seen a lot of these companies come up and, they promise ROIs, from 15% and upward, but, at some point they're not able to deliver. Well, what do you think is the problem here?
I think the major issue is over-promising and under-delivering. And I think this comes from the lack of expertise in the whole agri value chain, right? So, like we know, it's not just the end user. There's the farmer, the processor, the aggregators, and then the investors, right? So there's a whole value chain that these agri-techs are not playing in, right? And there's a large knowledge gap. So that is one of them. And there's a credit risk, right? So you're over-promising even before you start up, and you cannot now deliver. And that's where the problem comes from. So that in itself is a problem. And I think another reason would be, which is out of our control, is the climate change, right? And this is why you shouldn't overpromise, right? So there are things that are not within your control, with the lack of infrastructure that comes from the government as well, and the climate change. So all of these things mumbled up affects all of these things. And there's no agri-tech without agribusiness, right? So you have to actually understand the intricacies of starting an agribusiness before you can now promise people, right? Yeah. So I think those are most of
do
the
you
major
think that
challenges.
some of them are just outright scams?
Yeah, of course. And I think investors as well should do due diligence, right? You can't see high risk and, high reward. It's that's the game. But you
The
see
tough
high risk
mix.
and low reward, and you
Right.
want to jump on it. So it's really on the onus of the investor as well, because you can't invest in what you don't understand, first of all. Yeah.
So what are the, some indicators, investors should, look at before actually investing in, some of these startups?
To build credibility, you have to ensure that where you're investing in investments, there's some regulation involved, right? So with AFEX, right, we are registered under the Securities Exchange Commission, and that gives credibility to our investors. So there's several things as well, right? Yeah.
Okay, so is there any difference between COMEX and, many other agri startups, offering alternative investment opportunities at this time?
So I think I would just like to buttress that at AFEX with COMEX, we use agri technologies to solve agri problems, but it's not an agri tech, right? I'll start with that first.
Okay.
And right, so we're able to differentiate ourselves with the regulators, first of all, and the fact that every product that is on the platform is approved by the Securities Exchange Commission, first of all, right? And secondly, we're able to provide product offerings to suit different investors' appetite. And we're not guaranteeing high returns. All our prices are determined by the market forces of demand and supply.
So there are no promises here. You just, follow the current
rules, yeah.
market demand and supply.
Yeah, well,
So
we promise guarantee and...
at least you're promising something. Yeah. Anyway, what are some of the, direct policies that can be implemented to ensure that, agricultural investments, are kind of safe at this point?
Yeah, so the onus is on both the agri-tech companies and the regulators to ensure that there's enough information, to ensure there's accountability and transparency, right? So a lot of agri-tech businesses are there and regulators are not even aware of their existence. There has to be some hand-holding to ensure that all of this is easily accessible. There's information to ensure that investors know what they're getting into before they start investing. And investors also have to ensure that they are also going through the whole process as well.
And now, we're getting to a point where, more of these startups are springing up. But what do you think is what is your outlook, for this particular sector going forward?
I think, yeah, technology is definitely going to play a huge role in ensuring that there's more information passed across, more knowledge sharing and hand-holding in the whole process. We see that more people, when they're starting up, they'll try and get licensed to ensure that there's some credibility. And that also keeps them accountable as well, right? To ensure that you're not just in business for yourself for profit, you're in business for profit for the people and the planet.
Okay. All right, we'll continue with AFEX. After the break, we'll be crossing over to Abuja to have a Micro Martins just after this. Do stay with us. Welcome back. All right, let's bring in Michael Martins now, portfolio manager at AFEX, to run us through. Great to have you, Michael. Good morning.
Hi, Ladi. Good morning. As
Good
you well know,
morning.
it's always a pleasure to be here.
A pleasure to have you. Well, first, take us through the week's activities on the market.
Surely. So let me give a bit of summary with regards to what happens on the commodities exchange from the date of the 2nd of November to the 8th of November. So with regards to the volume of transactions traded on the exchange, that value went up by 6,532% from 144.4 million to close the trading week at over 9.5 billion, which is symptomatic of the idea that, or the fact rather, that we are having a lot of trades on the exchange. We saw a similar increase in the total number of contracts traded on the exchange, which went up by 158.28% from 477,115 contracts to close the trading week at over 1.2 million contracts. The total number of deals, however, fell from 71 deals to close the trading week at 61 deals, falling by 14%. The ACI, which is the AFEX Commodities Index, and the AEI, which is the AFEX Export Index, both remained unchanged at 427.34 and 168.08. With regards to the volume of contracts traded on the exchange, like I said earlier, we saw a massive volume of contracts traded on the exchange this week, with the biggest change happening with paddy rice, which went from trading 0 contract last week to trading more than 1 million contracts this week. We also saw massive volume of contracts change with maize. We traded up from 195,000 contracts to trading over 229,000 contracts. So those are largely the biggest changes with regards to volume of contracts traded on the exchange that we saw in the week under consideration. With regards to price changes on the exchange, the biggest change happened with soybean, which went up by 8.74%, gaining 29.29 in the contract value to close the trading week at 364.29 naira per kg. And then the second, we also have maize, which went up by 5.57%, gaining 10.03 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at just over 119 naira per contract. We also had a significant price change with cocoa, which went up by 4.17%, gaining 59 in the contract value to close the trading week at 1,250 naira per contract. And last but certainly not least, the only red decline that we saw on the exchange in the week under consideration was paddy rice, which fell by 0.45%, losing just 9.8 naira in the contract value to close the trading week at 214 naira per contract. So those are largely some of the biggest changes that we saw with regards to price, volume, and then a bit of summary with regards to what happened on the exchange in the week under consideration from the 2nd of November to the 8th of November.
All right, Michael, great, massive move there from the soybean. But with regards to trading, what are some key considerations for trade, both on the exchange and on the open market?
Thank you very much, Ladi, for that question. What you very often find out is that the same considerations that apply to trading and trading on the exchange also tends to apply to trading also on the open market. So with the exchange, there are 3 main components that I would say matter a whole lot when it comes to trading on the exchange. The first of is quantity, right? So it is to say that the volume that you have trading on the exchange is a derivative of the volume that you have available in the open market, right? So if you don't have a significant volume available in the open market, that to a large extent can determine the volume of trades that you have on the exchange. Secondly would also be quality, right? So due to the fact that the exchange acts primarily as an intermediary between people who buy commodities and then people who sell them, it is incumbent on the exchange to make sure that every single product that goes through the exchange from one buyer to a seller is of the best quality possible. And to that regard, we have quality specifications on the exchange, that cuts across from grains that we trade on the exchange, even to all the export products that we trade that we trade on the exchange. And that's particularly important, right? Because that's part of your unique value proposition as an exchange. The ability to guarantee that quality is what makes you, it's one of the biggest advantages that you have over people just going into the open market to just trade willy-nilly without really having any overview of what the quality that they're trading. And the third will also be price. Ideally, as an exchange, because you're acting as an intermediary, it's incumbent on you to find the price point that is both beneficial to the person who's selling the commodity and also to the person who's buying the commodity. So at every point in time, you're trying to balance both sides of that trade, equation. I think those are largely the three major factors or three key considerations for trade on the exchange. In the open market, though, as opposed to, in addition rather to what the factors that we have, contributing factors that we consider for trade on the exchange, we don't also have cash or capital or whatever name you want to give to it, which is basically to say, in terms of settlement in the open market, cash is king, right? And people who trade in the open market very often have to reconcile themselves to the fact that if you do not have cash at hand, you will not take any grains home. So largely, those are the three different factors three key considerations for trade on the exchange. And then in addition to that, you then have cash being a major consideration for trading the open market.
Right, well, cash is king there. Well, are there any dynamics playing out in the open market as a result of, price changes, during the last commodity season?
Yes, exactly. And this is a bit out of the survey that I sort of went to the open market to do last week. This is a bit of the feedback that we got from the market. And if you notice very carefully, a lot of the price dynamics that happened last season, the biggest price change that we saw in the commodities market was particularly with soybean, which went up by more than 100% over the course of last commodity trading season. So what that did was that essentially spurred a lot of farmers to cultivate a lot of soybean, in comparison to maize. And I must explain that dynamic. It is to say that for a lot of farmers, they aren't necessarily just monoproduct cultivators. They essentially, most of the time, tend to cultivate more than one crop, per time, sometimes in the same location, sometimes in different locations, right? So when you see that type of massive price increase in a commodity, farmers will tend to cultivate a whole lot more of that commodity in an attempt to, take advantage of that price appreciation, so that they can essentially make a lot of money. So what we are seeing in the market this year is that we are seeing significant volume of soybean come into the market, even more than, the volumes that we've seen for maize, even though, the huge volumes that we expect from maize aren't really expected until like the second to the third week of the month of November. So yes, we are seeing a lot of volume of soybean come into the market as a result of the massive price increase that happened with soybean last season.
Yeah, quite a massive price move there. All right, Michael Martin, Portfolio Manager at AFEX, thank you so much for coming on Biz this morning.
It's always a pleasure.